Okay, let's dive into this. Imagine, if you can, holding a grudge for 2 straight decades, just waiting in the shadows for your target to make a single mistake. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack one of the most gripping, complex, and incredibly high stakes geopolitical true crime sagas of the modern era. We're looking at a deeply sensitive intelligence operation that honestly plays out like a blockbuster Hollywood thriller, but was, in fact, cold, calculated reality. It's the story of a deadly cat and mouse game between the Israeli intelligence agency, Mossad, and a top commander of Hamas, an operation cryptically named Operation True Love. And the defining number of this entire explainer is 20. 20 years. That is the exact amount of time Mossad waited to settle the score and close this highly sensitive case. Because in the murky world of international espionage, patience isn't just a virtue, right? It's a strategic weapon. For 2 full decades, intelligence operatives kept their eyes locked on a single target, literally waiting for just one slip-up. And when you look at the timeline, it becomes clear this wasn't just a single isolated event. It spans from kidnappings way back in the late 80s to a tragic rocket attack in 2005, a high-tech cyber trap in 2009, and finally, a meticulously planned assassination in 2010. So to really understand the climax of this story, which goes down in a luxurious Dubai hotel room, we have to trace the thread all the way back to the beginning. Section 1, 1989. The initial spark. To understand the start of this massive 20-year operation, we have to go back to the spring of 1989. A 19-year-old IDF soldier named Ilan Sadin was just trying to hitch a ride home after spending months away on duty. A white Subaru pulls up, and the guys inside offer him a lift. The men were disguised as Jewish civilians, but they absolutely weren't. They were undercover operatives belonging to Hamas's newly formed top-secret squad known as Unit 101. Tragically, Sadin was shot at point-blank range and buried in a scrap site. And this actually mirrored a very similar kidnapping and murder of another soldier, 21-year-old Avisas Cortes, just a few months prior. Despite massive, sweeping searches, it took 7 agonizing years for Sadin's remains to finally be located and returned to his mother. Section 2. The smuggling mastermind. The man who actually pulled the trigger that day was Mahmoud al-Mabhouh. After the killings, he managed to slip away and totally evade capture. Over the years, he rose through the ranks, eventually moving to the Syrian capital of Damascus to oversee finance and weapons procurement for Hamas. Now, according to the source material, a really stark contrast emerged during this time. While a largely poor Palestinian population was paying taxes and making donations for the cause, al-Mabhouh was living in a highly secure, incredibly posh neighborhood in Damascus called Kafr Sousa, coordinating the massive smuggling of funds and weapons from Iran. And this smuggling had some devastating real-world consequences. Fast forward to 2005. An Iranian-made Qassam-3 rocket, which is a weapon with an 8-mile range and a 20-kilogram payload that our sources note al-Mabhouh helped smuggle, struck the southern Israeli town of Sderot. That attack tragically killed 17-year-old Ella Abu Qassis as she was physically shielding her younger brother from the blast. For Mossad's chief Mir Dagan, this was it, the final straw. It wasn't just about getting justice for the soldiers in 1989 anymore. It became about dismantling the entire supply chain by taking out its architect. Mossad's network was hyper-activated. Section 3. Setting the cyber trap. By late 2009, the world of espionage had evolved drastically. We're moving from the analog disguises of a white Subaru into a fully digital battleground. And the setup here involved some highly sophisticated tradecraft. Mossad had cultivated an asset deep inside Syrian intelligence, codenamed Agent Golden Palm, who actually worked directly on al-Mabhouh's security detail. The infiltration was executed flawlessly. Picture this. At a cafe, an operative sits down at Golden Palm's table, smokes a cigarette, and then just gets up and walks away, leaving his lighter behind on the table. Golden Palm takes the lighter, pops the cap off, and it reveals a hidden USB drive containing a custom Trojan horse virus. Golden Palm easily plugs it into al-Mabhouh's laptop, suddenly granting Mossad's elite Unit 8200 total 24/7 access to monitor his every single digital move. Because they were literally watching his screen in real time, Mossad saw al-Mabhouh personally book a flight from Damascus to Dubai in January of 2010. Think about how wild this is. A simple travel preference became a fatal flaw. He chose Emirates flight EK912 specifically because the Syrian state airlines didn't serve alcohol, which he apparently wanted to avoid. Furthermore, flying Emirates meant his armed bodyguards couldn't carry their weapons on board. So he books a solo economy ticket, completely isolating himself. He essentially handed Mossad the perfect window of opportunity. But of course, knowing his flight is really only half the battle. Al-Mabhouh hadn't booked a hotel in advance. Once he landed in Dubai and checked himself into the Al Bustan Rotana Hotel, Mossad was looking at a massive operational hurdle. I mean, how do you bypass the security of a modern 5-star hotel in a heavily surveilled city without triggering a single alarm? Section 4, the Dubai assassination. This brings us to January 19, 2010, the climax of Operation True Love. Mossad didn't just send in some lone hitman. They deployed an astonishing 30 agents to Dubai. We're talking men and women, mostly aged 25 to 35, flooding into the city on all these different flights. They were dressed up in high-end casual and formal wear, hauling expensive luggage and laptops, perfectly disguised as wealthy European tourists. They blended completely seamlessly into the luxurious backdrop of Dubai, just waiting for their target to touch down.
And the ambush itself was intensely coordinated. The second Al-Mabhouh checked into room 230, an agent posing as a tourist immediately booked room 237, literally right across the hall. While Al-Mabhouh left the hotel for a bit to buy some Nike sneakers in a mall and then meet at the Iranian embassy to discuss Fajr 5 missiles, the hit team went to work. Using advanced technology, they somehow cloned the key card to room 230. 4 operatives slipped inside, flipped off the lights, and waited in total dead silence.
At exactly 8:32 p.m., Al-Mabhouh returned and opened his door. Before he could even blink, the agents ambushed him, immediately locking him in a chokehold. They then injected him with succinylcholine. Now, this specific drug is a paralytic. It completely immobilizes the victim's body. The source actually describes it as making you drop like a sack of flour. But the terrifying part is that it keeps the person entirely conscious. So Al-Mabhouh could see, hear, and feel absolutely everything, but he couldn't move a single muscle. What happened next was the stark culmination of a 20-year grudge. The operative stripped him to his underwear and laid him on the bed. Then, an agent pulled out photographs of Ilan Sadon and Avi Sasportas, the 2 IDF soldiers murdered way back in 1989. They held the photos right in front of Al-Mabhouh's face for 1 full minute. Finally, they placed the small device against his chest and delivered a staggering 11,000-volt shock, instantly stopping his heart to simulate a natural heart attack. Section 5. Fallout and strategic impact. After it was done, the agents calmly locked the door from the inside and simply walked away. Within hours, they vanished onto flights across the globe, disappearing well before hotel security even found the body the next afternoon. Initially, Dubai police genuinely thought it was a heart attack, but the discovery of his fake passports and his missing briefcase tipped them off. Through completely exhaustive CCTV tracking, Dubai authorities pieced together the movements of the agents and exposed the cloned passports they used from the UK, Ireland, and Australia. This ignited a massive global diplomatic crisis. Critics and intelligence experts worldwide called the operation sloppy for leaving such a vast digital footprint. But Mossad chief Mayor Dagan, he largely ignored the criticism. To him, the massive diplomatic fallout was entirely secondary to the strategic objective, because the final result of this massive operation was exactly 4. Operation True Love struck such intense fear into the smuggling networks that for the next 4 years, there was strategic silence on Israel's southern borders. According to the source material, during those 4 years, 0 Israeli civilians were killed by rocket attacks. The supply chain had been completely and utterly severed. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. This explainer has laid out the cold, brutal calculus of international intelligence. A 20-year wait, 30 undercover agents, and a global diplomatic firestorm, all traded for 4 years of silence and security. So as you process the sheer scale of everything we just covered, you kind of have to ask yourself, in the ultra-high-stakes ethics of global espionage, was a massive diplomatic disaster worth 4 years of strategic silence? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll see you next time.